Hello and welcome. This is an MPC, and in this video we're going to learn how to sample on this machine from a turntable and other devices. Let's start with things we need to know. The MPC is a sequencer of samples. Having a basic understanding of what a sample is, how to make and edit them vastly expands the possibilities of what you can do with this machine. Samples are audio files used in the creation of music. Samples can either be short, like a single drum hit, or long, like the melody of a song. Samples are widely used in music. In some cases, an entire song or album could be made of samples. Often samples are used to create a virtual instrument like a piano, synth, or drums. You may think that samples are exclusively used in genres like hip-hop and EDM, but that is incorrect. For example, in rock music, sometimes drums that were recorded live can lack punch, and a kick drum sample may be added during mixing to augment them to sound more full. If you make any sort of modern music, then having a basic understanding of samples and how they are used is highly recommended, and knowing how to make them is also valuable information. These days, samples can be readily found online. The MPC comes loaded with them, and there's expansion packs you can get to add more. But it also has a powerful built-in sampler to create your own. Okay, I've just been handed this note from our legal department. Ollie Loops does not condone or recommend stealing any copywritten material for use in commercially published music without the permission of the copyright holders. But for educational purposes, let's learn how to make samples. A classic method of sampling is recording directly from vinyl records. The art of digging for samples is a coveted art form. Finding a dusty old gem somewhere and giving it a new life as a reimagined song, complete with artifacts and imperfections, is a cherished process and style. Regardless of numerous milestones in technology, this is still a time-honored technique that is relevant today, especially in certain subgenres. Sampling from vinyl requires an understanding of different signals that we're likely to be dealing with. Phono level and line level are both used in different turntable models, despite that they both use RCA connectors. These signal types are different, and we need to receive the signal from the turntable properly for optimum sound quality. Traditionally, turntables output audio at phono level, which is much lower in terms of signal strength than line level. A DJ mixer or preamp is needed to boost the signal up to line level strength. In recent years, some turntables now have integrated photo preamps. Additionally, some MPCs have phono inputs and some don't. Let's return back to this in just a moment. How do you know if your turntable uses phono or line level? Good question. If it has a ground wire or ground terminal, it is phono level. Also, look for a label that either says phono or line. Some turntables even have a switch between the two. Let's say you have an MPC-1 which doesn't have a phono level input. If your turntable has a built-in phono preamp, like this Newmark PT01, you've got a relatively straightforward setup. Using a pair of RCA audio cables, connect the output from the turntable to the input on the MPC. On the MPC, the inputs are quarter-inch connectors. Use a pair of female RCA to male quarter-inch mono adapters to make the connection from the RCA cables to the MPC. Let's record and save a sample into the MPC. On the MPC, enter sampler mode. Turn monitoring on. Play a record to test the signal. This turntable has a built-in volume knob as part of its preamp. Adjust the volume of the turntable to somewhere between 50 and 75%. Adjust the input gain on the back of the MPC so that it's strong but not clipping. On the screen of the MPC, lower the input threshold so that it's below the average peak of the signal but not too low. Depending on the length of the sample you intend to record, set the maximum length accordingly. When you're ready to record, set the turntable stylus just before the audio you want to record. Press the arm button on the MPC. The turntable should automatically start. Recording should start when the input threshold is crossed. Press the stop button when you're finished recording. Place the tone arm on the armrest. A screen will come up on the MPC to keep or discard the recording. You can discard it if you didn't capture what you wanted, or you could save it to the MPC. Name the sample. You can also assign it to a pad within a program, but let's just save it for now. We'll return back to assigning samples to a program later. Press save on the display, select a location, and press save again. Pro tip: saving samples to an SD card or USB drive optimizes space on the MPC. Pro tip: this Newmark is an entry-level turntable with an inherent lo-fi sound. That may be what you want, but using a higher quality turntable and cartridge will result in better audio quality in your samples. From this technique's SL1200, we can get a higher quality sample, even from the same record. The turntable itself will play back the record in higher fidelity, and we can use a much higher quality needle or cartridge to produce cleaner and more accurate sound. This turntable doesn't have a built-in Phono preamp, and we'll need to convert the signal from Phono to line level. For this, we'll use a Phono preamp, like this Rolls VP29. Using a higher quality preamp will also yield better quality samples. With RCA cables, connect the output of the turntable to the input on the preamp. Using another set of RCA cables, connect the output of the preamp to the input on the MPC. Again, we'll use adapters to go from RCA to 1/4-inch connectors. Note, when you're using a turntable with a Phono level output, it's necessary to connect a ground wire from the turntable to the preamp. Pro tip, clean the record before you play and record it. Use a lint-free towel or an anti-static brush to clean the record along the grooves. On the MPC, turn monitoring on. Play the record on the turntable. Adjust the input gain on the MPC. Adjust the input recording threshold just below the peak of the signal. When ready, set the turntable stylus just before the area you want to record. Press ARM on the MPC. Start the turntable if it's not running already. The recording will start when the threshold is crossed. Stop the recording when complete. Place the tone arm on the armrest. Name the sample and save it to the MPC. MPCs such as the Live and Live 2 have built-in Phono preamps. This eliminates the need for an external preamp. There's a switch on this MPC to change the input from line level to Phono level. Flip that to Phono. Use RCA cables to connect the output of the turntable to the input on the MPC. Make sure to also connect the ground wire from the turntable to the ground terminal on the MPC. Repeat the recording process as before. If you wanted to level up your ability to sculpt the frequencies of a source, you could use a DJ mixer. Most DJ mixers have a 3-band EQ and input gain within each input channel. Some mixers even have effects. This is an easy way to modify the signal before it goes into the sampler. Since most DJ mixers have Phono preamps built in, the output of the turntable goes into the Phono input on the DJ mixer, including the Phono ground wire. Then the main output of the mixer goes into the MPC's input. Pro tip, 45s, that is, 7-inch single records that play at 45 RPM, technically have more resolution than records playing at 33 1/3 RPM. Sampling 45s yields higher sound quality. Not to confuse matters, but there are full-size records that play 45 RPM too, but mostly you'll see this format. Make sure you switch the turntable over to 45 RPM playback for these types of records. Now, when we play a record, we can adjust the high, mid, and low frequencies, say to get rid of the low frequencies and brighten up the mids and highs. You can also adjust the pitch of the turntable up or down. Adjust the input gain on the MPC, then adjust the input threshold. Set the stylus, arm the MPC, and start the turntable. Stop the recording. Place the tone arm on the armrest. Name the sample and save it. Pro tip, if you want to achieve maximum audio quality in your recordings, increase the recording bit depth. To do this, enter the preferences screen on the MPC, select the recording settings, then the recording bit depth. Change it from 16 to 24-bit. This will increase audio quality, but know that file size increases as well. We can also record from a computer. This is relatively simple to do. Use a stereo 1/8-inch TRS to 2 mono 1/4-inch TS connector audio cable to connect the output of the computer to the input on the MPC. Set the volume on the laptop to about 75%, and set the volume of whatever app you're recording to 75% as well. On the MPC, turn monitoring on. Adjust the input gain on the back of the MPC. Set the threshold of the input to just below peak. Play the source material on the computer. Stop the recording, name and save the sample. Similarly, you can record your phone. On an iPhone, use a Lightning to 1/8-inch adapter to connect the phone to an audio cable. Repeat the same steps as on the computer. Now that we have samples saved on the MPC, we can assign them to pads and use them in a sequence. First, let's load a sample into the current project. Browse to the location where you saved your samples and select one. Press the Load button to load a sample into the current project. Press the Sample Assign button to assign a sample to a pad. At the top of the screen, we see the current program we're assigning samples to. On the left side of the display, we see the sample pool. Select a sample and then press the Data Dial encoder to assign it to the pad. You can change it by selecting a different sample in the sample pool and pressing the data encoder. Now we can trim the start and end points of the sample because we may have some additional air or noise before or after the sample. Enter Sample Edit mode and select the sample at the top of the screen. Use the Q-Link encoders to zoom in and adjust the start and end points so that they are tight to the sample. Play the pad to hear the sample. Press the main button to return to the main screen. Let's say you want to load a longer sample, chop it into smaller samples, and spread those across the pads. Let's see how that's done. Go back to the Browse tab and select the sample and then press Load. Now go into the sample editor. Select the sample from the drop-down list at the top of the screen if it's not already selected. At the bottom of the screen, press the Trim tab until it says Chop. There's a few methods we can use to chop samples. Press Threshold and it will use an algorithm to select slices. You can adjust the threshold too. You can use Region to divide a sample into a number of equally spaced slices. This, along with the BPM method, are helpful if you have a perfect loop that you want to chop up evenly. The trick to making this work is to adjust the start and end points so that the timing of the loop is perfect. Then when you divide it into equal regions, notes align well, and you make easy work of the editing process. But this works best if the sample you're using has perfect timing when it was recorded, say of a drum machine. The method that I use is to manually chop the sample, which offers the greatest amount of flexibility. In this method, we can select where, when, and how many slices to chop a sample into. Select Manual Mode at the bottom of the screen. Now play the pads, starting from the bottom row, go left to right, and move up one row at a time. Each time you strike a new pad, it will create a new slice into the sample. Once you've made it all the way through, you'll want to edit the slices. The way I go about this is to start from the beginning, zoom in to make finer adjustments, and adjust the endpoints of each sample. Since the samples are linked together, adjusting the endpoint of the first also adjusts the start point of the second. Select the end value on the display to assign this parameter to the main data dial. Now when we rotate this encoder, it will adjust the endpoint of the currently selected pad. Adjust the endpoint so it's close to the next transient. Play the next pad to hear it. Repeat this process until all the start and end points are where you want them. Let's say you forgot to hit a pad and want to add a slice. Play the pad you want to divide into two and then press the Slice Plus button on the display. It will add a slice wherever you press the button during playback. It will also move the subsequent pads over one pad to make room for the new slice. And you can use the Trim Endpoint method to adjust the timing of these pads. If you want to delete a slice, select the pad you want to delete, then press and hold Shift, then press the Slice Minus button. This will move subsequent pads back a pad. Now that you have the slices where you want them, you'll need to assign them to a program. I like to create a new program and make the slices non-destructive. This means you won't make individual samples, just markers for the pads in the original sample. Press and hold Shift and then press the Convert button on the display. Make sure New Drum Program using slices is selected in the first field and non-destructive is selected in the second field. Then press Do It at the bottom of the screen. Press the Main button to return to the main screen. In the Programs section, select the program of slices we just created. It should be named after the sample we just chopped. Play the pads to test them. Once you have a pattern you like, press and hold Record and then press Play Start. Play the pattern. Press Stop to stop the recording. Once you're finished, you can go into Grid mode to edit the pattern further. Hey, subscribe if you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this video, and check out the description for more information. Thanks!